And Christine is going to start us off.
Great. Welcome. I'm so excited about all our participants. We have folks from all over and people that are working with children in such a wide variety of contexts and settings. I just wanted to take a minute to acknowledge that. We have some home visitors, we have lots of folks in school and early care settings, program leaders and interventionists and specialists, and of course, lots and lots of teachers and folks providing care directly for children. So, thanks again. It's really exciting just to see all the people that took time to come here and be with us today to talk about math. We're starting out with an example of one of our resources, just so you know. There is no need to frantically take notes and write down every little thing. We're covering a lot of information, but we've also collected it for you in a lot of really handy, accessible resources. So save your note taking for those really impactful, big aha takeaways. And all the pieces will be collected for you. And the slides and recording will be available as well. So jumping right in, as we know, we have folks here with all kinds of relationships with kids and working with kids in different capacities. And some of these ideas may be familiar and some might be kind of new. So regardless, we're going to be covering a lot of information, and we've designed this webinar so that we circle back around. So as I introduce the 9 big ideas of math, if something is still feeling a little fuzzy, no worries, because Erin is going to take the next section where she's going to introduce the framework of noticing, naming, and extending these math concepts into all the different parts of your day. And then Rachel is going to circle back one more time with a lot of really real life applicable examples and opportunities. So just know that we have designed this knowing that it's a lot, but that we're going to have lots of opportunities to revisit it in real life context, because that's how we learn best. So by the time we wrap up, you'll have been introduced to the 9 big ideas. You'll have been introduced and had some practice using the framework of noticing, naming, and extending math moments in your classroom. And you'll walk away with a bunch of strategies that you could use tomorrow, exactly how Rachel described, or tweaking them to make them your own. All right, so we have borrowed the 9 big ideas from the Erickson Institute for Early Math Collaboratives, their collaborative, and the link will be shared on the landing page and at the end of the webinar. But we're using this framework as kind of our baseline for approaching all the things that we know that children are engaging with throughout all their work and play in the day. As we talk through these, you'll notice there are a lot of interconnected concepts. Children don't learn these skills in isolation. As they're kind of developing their number sense, they're also, of course, practicing counting. And when they're measuring, all of these things are coming into play. So you will see overlap, and that is intentional, but breaking them apart this way helps us really dive into it a little deeper and learn how to notice it and extend it when we have that opportunity. Let's just jump right in. Our first concept is sets. We know that kids love a collection, and more often than not, when presented with that, they're compelled to sort these items into groups or categories. And this is really refining the concept of an attribute. So, to sort things into different groups, we have to be able to identify specific aspects of the objects or concepts or items. And this is a foundational math item. So when your kids are sorting their vehicles or dinosaurs or clothing, it is actually a foundational math concept. So we want kids to experience that a single collection could be sorted in several different ways. There's not one right way. And we want them to begin to refine and be able to be more sophisticated in their identification of these attributes. That word attribute is going to cycle back through. You'll hear that a lot more. The manipulative that we chose to talk about for this concept of sets are some really lovely translucent rainbow pebbles. And we chose them because their attributes are different colors And while the size is kind of hard to tell from the photograph, we can tell that there are some really distinct shapes. But even if you don't have rainbow pebbles, you probably have counting bears or a jar of vehicle sorters. All of these things are great materials that facilitate lots of practice with sets and grouping and categorizing. So, number sense is a concept that in the Erickson 9 big ideas is a really distinct, unique concept. A lot of times, early childhood educators think of number sense and pull in some of these other concepts that we're going to tease out, like counting or operations. But for the purposes of today, we are really refining our approach to number sense as the specific ability to associate the symbol of a number, so like the actual symbol of a four, with the word, the number word, the word four, and then that quantity, really refining that sense of fourness or how much a group, a collection, a set of objects is. And it seems super simple, but kids need repeated and lots of practice with lots of hands on things. So the more this happens, the more we can integrate and internalize this number sense and the association between the number words, the number symbols, and the quantities. A word you might hear associated with number sense a lot is subitize or subitize. I hear people say it both ways. And really quickly, the easiest way to describe that is when we think about rolling some dice during a board game and we see that pattern with 4 dots in the corner and a dot in the middle, and we immediately know that's 5. We don't have to count the pips. When that happens, we're subitizing. So when children are exposed to that in many ways or many opportunities, growing that kind of intuitive sense of the quantity, that's what that refers to instead of actually counting, which is our next slide. This seems super simple, but it is an aspect that requires so many pieces of math thinking to come together. To count, you have to be thinking about one-to-one correspondence, which means that each item that you're counting gets counted once and has one number name associated with it. We can't count the same item multiple times. It also requires that children actually have internalized the sequence of number names and that it's the same every time. When we count from 1 to 5, it goes in the same order every time. Um, it also is important to realize that it doesn't matter what order you count things in. So if I had a group of cars, if I started with the red one, my result is going to be the same in terms of quantity as if I started with the purple one. As grown-ups, that seems like a no-brainer, but as kids experiencing this, it actually takes experiences to help integrate that concept. And then finally, the concept of cardinality, which refers to when we are counting, knowing that if we have 5 cookies and we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that last number word also applies to the quantity. So being able to apply that to sets and collections, large and small, is the process of counting. The items that we chose to share here are dramatic play dishes, because this is one of the areas that kids get a lot of practice counting in the classroom. So especially with one-to-one correspondence, if you're setting a table for friends or serving food to friends, uh, having to correspond one item to one serving or person or place is such great physical practice of that. Operations is the manipulation of these numbers as we've kind of built these foundational aspects of quantity and set and number, being able to either decompose, break them apart, or compose, create them by putting groups together. And this sounds sophisticated, and this example of our number sense blocks with these abstract concepts of the actual number numerals instead of actual physical items is kind of a higher level approach to it. But our young children are doing this all the time, whether they have, we actually have some really great videos coming up where you're going to see this in action. But for the most part, with very young children, these are going to be happening as they're manipulating objects, as they're playing. If we're asking, how many more do we need so that everybody has one? If someone gave 2 of their cookies away, how many are left? Those are all of these operational senses. When we talk about pattern, you're going to hear some words that we spoke about when we were referring to sets. So, thinking back about attributes, pattern speaks to a predictable, repeated sequence of attributes. And so the children have to be able to identify those attributes, notice the pattern, and then repeat or extend what they're noticing. There's a lot at play here. We have a lot of control over how difficult these patterning invitations are based on the number of attributes and the materials that we offer. So, for example, in the photograph shared here, we have um, shapes and colors, but you'll notice there are some shapes that are repeated in different colors. So, children are really having to think about, am I patterning square, circle, cylinder, or am I patterning colors, green, orange, blue? Um, so that's a way that you can know what your target goal is with your kids and differentiate by choosing either simpler materials or materials with more attributes at play. As children begin to really integrate the idea of pattern, they'll apply it to not just physical objects, but concepts. So you'll notice that they're thinking about cycles in their lives, seasons, other routines, meals, days of the week. So that's really cool to see them take it from really tangible objects to concepts that are super abstract. Moving into measurement, this is like the ability to communicate in a reliable way these quantities that we've been building this awareness around. So, if we want to convey to someone else in a way that they're going to be able to understand and apply, we have to be able to measure it. You'll often hear folks talk about both standard and non standard units of measurement when we're working with young children. And what that's referring to is a standard unit of measurement is a universally understood uh, quantity, like inches or feet or pounds or even time, so hours and seconds. Um, Young children often like to measure with non-standard units of measurement. So we do a lot of measuring with Unifix cubes or math links, or even when we're washing hands for two happy birthdays, right? It depends how fast or slow you sing happy birthday, but we know it's there about the right time for getting your hands clean. As children begin to have a sense of the purpose and power of measurement, it's really fun to think about the kinds of tools that you would choose to apply or why we might have different kinds of things to measure. So even if we're measuring the same thing, like length, why might we use a ruler sometimes, but sometimes we need a tape measure? Or why are some tape measures flexible and some are firm and rigid? I know we have a sewist here, so there probably are some ideas around that. Data analysis is always one that folks kind of are curious, like, what does this look like with young children? It's such a big word. And it's really just the process of gathering information, representing it in a way that helps you interpret it to answer a question that you couldn't do without having that information previously. So, in early childhood, often that looks like charts and graphs, weather charts, morning sign in and attendance, birthday charts, surveys. If you are voting about which book you're going to read or a recipe that you're going to make, anytime you're collecting that information and representing it in a way that helps you make a decision. So, like so many other things, for very young children, it's most helpful when it's a tangible item. So with when you're physically putting your sign-in stone into a basket or using your name card to vote for your story. That's a more concrete physical opportunity than even like filling in a graph to represent quantities and being able to compare them. Spatial relationships refers to an understanding of your s- body and self in space, or the child's body and self in space, and everything around them. And this is really cool because it mirrors a child's development of empathy. So, just as we know a young child can't really put themselves in someone else's shoes, they also can't do that in terms of where they are and what another person's view or perspective might be of a physical space. So, as that develops, you get to see their spatial relationships really refine and become more sophisticated. So early on, this is going to be practicing positional language like above and below, under and next to, and it evolves into more sophisticated language like parallel and perpendicular. Um, and then even one step further would be thinking about measurement and angles and all the ways that we can describe how things exist in relationship to others. In action, we see a lot of this happening with any kind of building or construction play. So when we have opportunities to either notice what we see and give some language around, oh, I noticed you put that on top of that, or I wonder if that would fit under the cylinder. But it's also really fun to explore this with 3D physical gross motor skills. So, like obstacle courses or other times when they are physically experiencing their body in relationship to other things. And finally, shape refers to both regular 2D shapes and 3D shapes, and beginning to integrate the concept of the shapes and apply it to everyday objects. So you'll notice that children begin to touch on those attributes again. So we're thinking about things like how many sides does it have? How many angles or corners? You can refine your language based on your child's skill set and how accessible those concepts are to them. So as they begin to explore the attributes and the definitions that match those and noticing them in space, you can extend that to share that the 2D shape is actually just like the face of a 3D object. And then begin to see if you can notice those 3D objects in space. Just like numbers, shapes can be constructed and deconstructed. You can combine them to make new shapes, and you can take them apart to make other shapes. And the shapes that we commonly have names for are considered regular shapes, and even the shapes we don't have names for are still shapes. They're just not common ones. They're called irregular shapes. So that's it. We've cycled through our 9 big ideas of early math, and we'll hand it off to Erin.
That was such a succinct and thoughtful and direct overview of the 9 big ideas. I'm so grateful for that, Christine. And what we're going to focus on is, in my section anyway, a strategy of how we can put this into practice in the classroom every single day as we're working with our children in their play. So it's nothing that is specific that we need to really prepare for or write in our lesson plans, but we're going to go through some examples of how to use this practice, notice, name, and extend throughout the day. And we're going to focus on these 6 times a day. But this practice, notice, name, and extend, really just means to first take our binoculars, our math binoculars, and notice the opportunity that's right in front of us. The children are exploring with all of these 9 big ideas constantly. We just have to notice it. So once we've like zoomed in and isolated it, then we name it. We use our math vocabulary and describe that connection to the child's play. And then finally, we either extend it right in that moment by using an I wonder statement or an open-ended question, or we extend it later by planning for a future experience, by continuing our observation, and really understanding where the child is with that concept. So here's one example of how we could notice, name, and extend. So we're going to start with, there we go, a child playing in the block center. And we're going to notice that she's stacking the blocks on top of each other. So then I'm looking for, well, what are the skills that are being developed here, right? So I've noticed she's playing with blocks. How can I name it using my math vocabulary? Well, I can say, oh, I noticed you stacked square blocks on top of each other, making a tower. So you can see I included language for shape. I included positional language as well as directional language. It went up in a tower. But then how can I extend it? In this example, I can extend it right in the moment by saying, I wonder what would happen if you stacked the square blocks in a different way. And so this is actually what happened with that child. It was the same set of blocks, but instead of being stacked flat, they were stacked on the smaller face. And so then they went taller. So that's just a quick example of right in the moment being able to use notice, name, and extend. But we can really use this practice all throughout the day. So in this first section where I'm going to share examples, and then in Rachel's section where she's going to give you some suggested practices, we're going to focus on like the 6 kind of common types of day, right? So many programs have either a child choice time, it's child-led interest area time where they are allowed to choose their play. And then there might be teacher-led group times, small group times, or one-on-one study, meal times, transitions, personal care routines, and outside time. And if you're looking for a visual daily schedule, we actually have that template. Marilyn's going to put it in the chat for us. But if you're just looking for another visual resource to reference that, we have that for you as well. So in these examples, I have a mix of some videos as well as some photographs, and I'm really going to invite your participation to put into the chat what you hear and what you see that connects to the topic at hand. So we're about to watch a video of a child playing in the block center, and I want you to listen to, it's actually me who's playing with the child in the block center. So I want you to listen to the language and what's the math vocabulary that you hear being described. So as you hear it put into the chat, it can either be the direct words that you hear, or if you want to connect it to the big idea, connect it to shape, connect it to spatial relations, or even if it's something that you see in the video that it's not something the teacher's narrating, please put that in the chat. But this is an opportunity to put on our binoculars and to observe what's happening in this scenario. Is someone going over or under your bridge? Oh, you're working hard to figure that out. What do you think you could do to make that go over all the way across? Ooh, you're trying to put them next to each other. That's one idea. That didn't work. Oh, then you moved it closer. And now you're putting it on top.
That's the carry thing. That's the wagon. You can put that wagon in here.
Oh, okay. Now what? Thank you, Yasiel. Thank you. Ooh, Yasiel's gonna add. So I stopped it right there. What was her aha? And by the way, my focus had shifted to the other child who joined her play. But if you notice, she had her aha. She figured out how to place one of the thinner plank blocks on top and then separate the larger unit blocks underneath to create this bridge that she was earlier trying to figure out, right? So just in the course of her own play, she manipulated the blocks. She was absolutely exploring space and the size and dimension, as well as measurement. And so we talked about, oh, it got closer, it got further away. What do I need to do to accomplish this in my play? And maybe you saw something with the child in the back who was at a different skill level and he was manipulating a different type of block. So one way we could extend this is to create opportunities to create bridges in other centers and with other learning materials. So another block example when we look at this is, wow, this was like a whole creation. So maybe if you could put into the chat, what is the big idea that you see? What are you zooming in on when you see this picture? Well, I see that they made a structure with multiple enclosures. Yeah, many different rooms and shapes of those rooms. Yeah. So I noticed that some of the rooms that you built created different shapes. I see one rectangle, I see 2 triangles, and I also see 2 squares, right? So right in that moment, we could also say, do you see any other shapes in the rooms of your building? I wonder what additional shapes you could create. Yeah, love that. That's so great.
Future architects, yeah.
I know, yeah. So we're also seeing math happening in our art center, right? So in this situation, they're using like Play-Doh stampers and other tools. And if we zoom in, we can name the opportunity by saying, oh, wow, I noticed you repeated the pattern of large blue circle, medium orange circle, and a pink circle in the middle. So not only are we using our positional vocabulary, we're using patterning vocabulary, shapes, and size. So it was the large blue circle, the medium orange circle, and a pink circle in the middle. So then we might extend it right in that moment to say, wow, I wonder if you're going to continue to repeat that same pattern, or maybe you're going to make a new pattern with other circles. So in this example, sorry, I hit too fast. It's a child coming out of writing center and has created her own map.
Now, where's the start and where's the finish of your map?
Okay, here's the start, here's the finish.
Oh, and then what's at the finish right there? What's that a picture of?
That is where we started, and that's where the gold is.
Oh, that's where the gold is. Okay, and who's going to look for the gold?
This is where my mom and dad is, me and my brother.
For her language.
Then follow this black road into the quicksand, go zoop, run quickly across, go back to the lake, and you throw down a piece of food. Then you go right across, and then you go down the
Right? So yes, the child in this example was using her own positional language. She was saying across and over. And earlier in the video, the teacher had asked about, ooh, what's that blue square, right? It had a beginning, a path, and an end. So this child had an interest in maps and directions. So you could build on that interest by giving opportunities to have maps in different areas and then highlight that math vocabulary like scale, measurement, and distance. We also are seeing math in dramatic play. And in this example, it's hair salon. It's the Tools of the Mind class that I was supporting in that instance. And the math vocabulary here is that the child, we were role playing and I was the person coming in for a cut and the child was the stylist. And I said, well, I'd like 2 inches cut off. When the child said, well, how much is that? And so that's the opportunity where I know she has an interest. She said, well, 2 inches, what's 2 inches, right? So the opportunity to extend in that moment is, I wonder how we could figure out how long 2 inches is, right? And we get to leave it open-ended. So we could, oh, maybe there's a ruler, maybe there's one of our longer measuring tapes, right? But how could we go and discover that as a part of our play? In your sensory area, Play-Doh is such a rich tool and medium for a lot of different ways. But in this example, we might notice making imprints in the Play-Doh. So in both of these examples, the opportunity to name it is to describe what you see. So each time you stamp the flower, it makes 4 circles. Or to the Play-Doh next to it, you could say you made lots of shell imprints, right? Describing it. There's such power, Kathy, in describing a child's play. So I want to pause here to say that if anything you take away from today, it is your ability to be in the moment with the child and just describe what you see. Use an ever increasing rich descriptive vocabulary to just narrate what it is that's happening in front of you. And I think you'll naturally find yourself, naming their shapes, naming their relationship to each other, bigger and smaller circles, small little circles together. Ooh, they were big and far apart, right? So in this example, if the child is showing this interest, you could say, oh, I wonder how many imprints you created all together, right? And so then extending that to adding it all together. In transitions, this is going to be another video of an opportunity that happens repeatedly at the start of every day. Again, I want you to listen to math vocabulary and put that into the chat as you hear it.
Can you find your name and put yourself, you were at home, but now you're at school. And you're going to be the second person, number 2, to put your name at school.
I think I paid me back there.
Can you take your name and put it at number 2? You're still drying your hands. Okay. Number 2. There you go. Isabella is number 2. Go have a seat, Bella.
So then the opportunity with transitions is to continue that and build on their learning. So with data analysis, we can compare different points of data using that same tool.
So take your finger over here. What number is this? 4. 4 people are missing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Down, across, down.
Karen, that's a great question. So often in charting, we start at the bottom to show like a bar graph comparison. So being able to build the quantity is just a frequent way of showing the data and then making that to connection later when we introduce bar graphs and charts. So it's a common practice. It's one way. It could certainly be grouping them together in circles or other visual representations, but sometimes being able to see data and information starting from the bottom at 1 and then increasing the quantity as it goes up in the graph. So going outside is another time to either, whether it's our active play or interacting with nature, to notice what the child is interested in. So this child was noticing the different clusters of flowers, asking questions about their different type and how many and how they looked. And so the opportunity was to say, wow, these flowers all have the same pattern of a purple star in the middle surrounded by a white edge. So it could be patterning, but yeah, it could also be counting the flowers. The key is to not automatically steer the learning to what we see the opportunity is, right? It's to pick up on what the child's natural interest is and then to build on it there. So in this example, she was more noticing pattern. So then extend where the interest is and say, I wonder if any of the other plants have patterns we can find. And then it's very likely that you'll bring in other math concepts as well, positional language and counting included. Other core times throughout the day are meal times. And during mealtime, it is, just like Christine mentioned, such a great opportunity to connect one-to-one correspondence, especially when we're setting the table. When we're scooping, we can say, could you please start with 3 scoops of each item or 2 scoops, right? And then as the children ask for more, we can ask, how many more do you want? We can comment on how much they took. That was a lot. That was a little. Can you take a little scoop? Or could you fill your milk halfway? Could you fill your glass halfway with milk, right? Each of these is about connecting to the opportunity at hand. Personal care routines is another rich one. And this one is wonderful for sequencing, right? So in this example in the pre-K, you can see the children actually wrote this because this is child invented spelling, but the teacher really honored the fact that the children created this sequence chart for their personal care routine. So really noticing and reinforcing when children go in to wash their hands that it's a step, it's a set of steps in order to complete that sequence. So look, first we soap, second we scrub, third we rinse, and fourth we dry. And we could also argue that there are some other steps, but this was a child created tool, so I love that. That's also an opportunity though to ask more questions, right? And then look for that multi-step care routine in lots of your different care routines throughout the day, right? So if we're putting away our cots, what do I have to do first? Well, first I have to gather up my bedding, put it in my cubby, then come back, ask a friend, and carry our cot back to its home. And then finally, teacher-led activities is, I think, where most of us go like right away when we think of math, right? Oh, I want my unit cubes. I want my like counting bears, the things that I think about traditionally when I'm going to support mathematic learning. And those have a really important place. But in this video, we're going to highlight the fact that we need to meet the child where they are and follow their interest. And that if they're interested in the activity in the moment, build on it. Capitalize on it. See if you can do a quick assessment of their learning in several different areas.
You did 4 blocks.
Yeah.
Would you like to do another one?
No, but I'll do 1.
So you did
I'll
1,
do
2,
one more.
3, 4. What comes next? Would you like to take out the 5 card?
Yeah.
Where is the numeral 5? Do you see the number 5?
Yeah.
Where?
Right there.
Right there's 5.
Yeah.
Oh, start over. Sorry, I was talking to you.
2, 3, 4, 5.
5, Jose. You did it.
Yeah.
Awesome. You want to keep going?
Yeah.
All right, put those blocks
See that
away.
he was interested in that, right? And that being able to isolate, not only did he have rote counting, he had one-to-one correspondence, he had numeral recognition. It wasn't about placing the cards in front of him and giving him what came next, but really asking him to be able to do that independently. And so that's where this assessment comes in continuously, is observing the children to see where are they in their learning, and then providing that next opportunity right for what they're ready for, right? This one kind of sums it up. I love this last example of, we're looking at a group of 5-year-olds, and I'm just going to let it speak for herself, but she's going to make all of her learning visible. So again, the same ask. As you listen to what she says, type in, like, what's the math vocabulary? What are the concepts or the big ideas that you hear her and see her going through?
5 plus 5 equals 10. 5 fingers, 10. So we equal if we had 2 kids. No, wait. 1, 2, 2. No, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. Yes, it works!
What works? Tell me more.
Because everybody will get 2 lemons. Wait. 1. See? Everybody will get 2 lemons. Even the teacher.
Wow.
I love that. So like, she was working through that she had 10 total, and how can I divide that, right? And so she made that discovery that, oh, I have 4 friends, and without even using that math vocabulary, that was the process that she was working out. So hopefully you can see some connections to just routine play that's going to happen throughout your day. But to give you even more suggested practices, I'm going to kick it over to Rachel to kind of go through those 6 times a day.
Thank you so much, Erin. So right now we're really going to look at some specific strategies for how you can facilitate this great learning within your classroom setting. So first, we're going to look at those center areas, so specific areas of play, and we're going to look at dramatic play. And creating a market within your dramatic play is a great way to facilitate that math learning. Having you may not have the ability and the resources to have this huge, beautiful marketplace right here, but you can do this in so many different ways. You can do it with cardboard boxes. I've seen teachers transform that dramatic play area using butcher paper. You really can do anything. And as far as your marketplace, you can do it with play food. You can also do it with other materials you have. One of my favorite marketplace transformations actually happened around the holidays, where students were picking gifts and shopping for those and then wrapping them. So there's lots of different things and that you can do with that. Now with this, we're thinking about money. And so using that calculator, using a cash register with pretend money, these kids a lot of times aren't getting that exposure anymore to that transaction. Parents aren't taking them necessarily to the grocery store because they're getting Instacart, or their parents are using a check card or a debit card when they're checking out. So really having that exposure to some play money is also great. But when we're talking about that addition and subtraction, it's not just with the money, it's also with the items. So having that shopkeeper look at the items that they have and say, oh my goodness, you had 5 apples and Joey bought 3 of them. How many more apples do you have left to sell? So really teaching that addition and subtraction that way as well with that classroom transformation. And then in your art area, so the art area is a great place to explore with math and really bringing those found materials in from outside, especially this time of year, is a great way to have that exposure. So one of my favorite things that I've seen recently in our research is not only looking at sets and attributes and comparisons with color and size and shape, but really looking at, say, like the saturation. So if you have leaves that are turning yellow, they can compare those leaves in order based on which one it has the most green all the way to the least green. So really learning that they can sort things by attributes in different ways. Dryness, those leaves start to get really dry and crumbly. They can sort them by the driest leaf all the way to the one that still has the most moisture in it that just fell from the tree. So you can incorporate science with that as well. Lots of different things. We're going to talk about more outside in a minute, but lots of different things you can do with those found materials from outside and bringing them in. In the block area, Erin and Christine alluded to this a little bit, but really just going in and observing and verbally sharing with your students what you're seeing with them. I wonder what will happen if you roll that truck under the bridge. I wonder how you put that block on top without the tower falling down. So really incorporating that math vocabulary into the block area for them in that real-time experience allows them to later be able to do that independently without having a lot of pressure to do so. Often we're saying, where is this? Where is that? They're able to kind of hear you do it and then move on from there. And then mealtime. So Erin really addressed that family style piece, which is on here as well, and all the great things you can do with family style. I do know that in a lot of schools since COVID, they've kind of moved away from that. We absolutely love family style and wish more schools would be able to go back. But you can still incorporate math even if you're not able to do that family style meal. If you're able to set the table doing those sets, as you can see right here, they have 4 place settings and having a student put those out if that's allowable. Also, if you're the teacher passing out the meal, you can talk about your math thinking that's going on in your brain as you're passing things out. For example, everyone's going to get 4 fish sticks. I need to count them out as I give them to you. And then you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4. And so you're demonstrating that you're doing those sets. Another thing to do is when your students are eating, you can do subtraction as they're eating. So you can verbalize what you're seeing. So you can say, oh, Charity had 4 fish sticks and she ate 2 of them. I wonder how many fish sticks she has left. And then everybody's going to share that she has 2. And then you can go back and even state that subtraction problem and say, oh, she had 4 fish sticks. She ate 2 of them. 4 minus 2 is 2. So you're really demonstrating that addition problem for them. And then transitions. Cleanup time is a great time for math, and it actually helps a lot with cleanup as well. So talking about, oh, I wonder who can show me 3 triangles as we clean up. And then also using those positional words. I wonder if we can clean up all the things that go up on the top shelf first. What about the middle? Now, lastly, can we do the things that go on the bottom shelf? So can we teach that as well as we're doing cleanup? One of my favorite things is those attention grabbers. So I don't know if any of you guys are using class, but I just left the school setting and we were using the class assessment in our schools. And one of the pieces that is a key component that's often difficult is that loss of educational time during transitions. So really having some of these attribute grabbers and songs in your back pocket to use throughout your day as you're doing transitions. Some of these are super simple and you're going to know them. But that first one is just if you can hear me, show me 3. So they're showing a certain number of fingers, however many you want. You can also do it with, if you can hear me, tap your nose twice. If you can hear me, tap your head 3 times. Another one is to do a version of that with clapping or stomping. If you've got some really active kids, if you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. And you keep going until everybody's doing it with you. My absolute favorite that I love to see kids demonstrate after I've done it as a teacher is the magic addition trick with your hands, which is, all right, let's hold up some fingers here. I have 3 plus 2, and I'm gonna do my magic trick and I'll clap my hands together, equals 4. And then you can do that with multiple addition problems, and they will start to come up to you and say, look, Miss Rachel, 1 plus 1 is 2. It's absolutely gorgeous. And then transitions when you're lining up. So there's a couple different things you can do. You can even change it up throughout the school year. I know lots of people have laminated things that they stick down on the floor so everybody has a spot to line up on. They get sticky and yucky throughout the year. Use that as your signal to clean it up and put another one down that's different to kind of change up that math activity. So the first thing on here is the shapes and colors. So having multiple shapes of different colors on your floor as your students line up, and then not having them line up in the same spot every day, but doing a little song for them to share with them who you want to line up and where. So you could say, Ellie lines up on the yellow square, the yellow square, the yellow square. Julio lines up on the blue triangle, line up please now. I just made that up, but anything like that you can do with them for lineup, and changing it up so they're learning all their colors and all their shapes as they're lining up, and it's an organized way to kind of do that and kind of do some behavior management too there. A great one that I thought was going to be way too hard for 4-year-olds, and I've seen many children rise to this occasion, is lining up in number order. Having that number line to line up, say 1 through 20, everybody has an assigned spot within the classroom. So they may have that same number, say my number is 10. That number is also going to be on my name card at my seat and maybe in my cubby. And so I know my number's 10 and where I'm going to stand in that line every single day when I line up within the classroom. The part where it gets a little bit more challenging for them is when you're out of the classroom and you want them to line back up. You ask them to line up in number order, and you will be surprised how many students can do this. They're going to start remembering the child that was in front of them, the child that was behind them. Then when a child's absent, they're going to start figuring out, oh, wait a minute, I'm number 10 and Jose was number 9. Jose's not here today. And Ellie is number 8. So they'll start to really think about that visual number line and missing numbers as well. It's really great. And then just lining up in patterns, boy, girl, hair color, shirt color, who has flip-flops on versus tennis shoes, shorts versus pants, that kind of thing. You can do that as well. Self-care, hand washing. Erin talked about this a little bit before, but that spatial vocabulary between the fingers, on top of, under, behind, all of that with your hand washing. And then singing those hand washing songs. We talked about happy birthday, but you can sing some of those number songs. We know that we want to wash hands for about 20 seconds. So are there some different number songs we can sing while we're washing hands? And then incorporating steps with quantity. So this is a little song that I created years ago to help some of my younger kiddos, which was just 1 pump of soap, scrub, 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 2 paper towels, rub, rub, rub. And that was a great way to incorporate the hand washing steps simply, but also incorporate math. All right, and then so this one, we're going to work on positioning words. It's a little bit of a stretch. It is math, but I also think you guys are getting close to winter, and having a couple different coat strategies is beneficial. So the first one is that Montessori coat trick. So you can teach some positional words for that. There's a link down here for the video that you can watch later if you need to. But just, we're going to put our coat in front of our toes down on the floor. We're going to put our arms in through our sleeves and put it up over our head and put our arms in. So that's the Montessori coat trick. You can watch the video later if you don't know it. But another one that I love to use, especially if you have kiddos that may have some gross motor challenges, is to actually take your coat. So I have my suit jacket here, and so you can take a child's coat and you can kind of flap it over the back of the chair so their arms are out. And then you can have the child sit down in the chair and they're going to put their arms through the holes and then put their coat on that way. So that's another little coat trick that's great if your children are having a hard time doing it independently. All right, outdoor play. If you're able to do garden, whether it's inside or outside, this is a great time to do math. I know, I think Peg mentioned before, measuring with your feet or your hands. Maybe we're spacing out seeds and we want them to be spaced out evenly. We don't always have a ruler. Can we use our shoe? Is there something that we can use to space out our seeds as we're allowing them to grow? Can we measure our things as they grow, and look at that comparison? Can we chart that? We're talking about data analysis and graphing. Do we have a rain gauge? Can we chart our rainfall for the week or the month and really talk about that as a class afterwards, and having somebody get to go check that rain gauge every day when you go outside to see, or look out the window after it's rained to see how much we have in that rain gauge. Using cloth measuring tapes that you can get usually at the fabric store or the fabric section of Walmart is a great way to do circumference. Some of those other measuring tapes are a little bit more difficult, but having those available to your students when they go outside or inside to really start to look at measuring that way instead of always measuring things in a straight manner. And then another one for outdoors is everybody absolutely loves the bear hunt. So changing it a little bit, and this is a great way to transition when you go outside, but also to transition back inside. And when you're coming back inside, it's great because everybody's kind of running around. You want everybody to come to the line, but this is a way to refocus and still have some play involved before having to line up. So it's just like the bear hunt where the child would repeat the line after you all the way through. And it goes like this. We're going on a shape hunt. And they repeat it. We're gonna find some big ones. We're not scared. Look over there. Uh-oh, a square. Let's go find it. And then everybody goes and they touch that shape. And then once everybody's touching a shape, you do the next shape. So you sing the song again with the next shape that you want to do that day. Teacher-led. All right. Classroom jobs are a great way of teaching math. We know all day long that you're taking attendance and you're counting all of those heads, right? So having a student that is doing that with you as well, and then when you're doing it, verbally counting it out loud as you're counting all your students and making sure everyone is there as well. The mess inspector or the center inspector is one of my all-time favorite jobs that's the most effective. Having a nice little, maybe a little sheriff's badge and a magnifying glass to use. But the way this works is that when everybody is done with cleanup, you have your mess inspector go back and they may have a basket or a bucket that they are going around and they're looking for items that didn't get cleaned up and they're collecting them. And then they're bringing them back to a central location that everybody can see. And you're counting how many items they found. And you can actually graph this. It's kind of like that thing that you see in factory settings that says, it has been 3 days since our last safety incident. So you can do that with your students and you can graph it. And the great thing about this graph is hopefully you're going to be able to show data analysis in a downward trend. So maybe you start with 5 items. Sorry, Erin's cracking up over there. You start with 5 items that mess inspector found, but by Friday you've got 0 items. And so you can show that they've improved and that the graph is showing that improvement. So I absolutely love the mess inspector. I highly recommend everybody go back and start using it next week. The last one is secretary. We know, if you're in the public school system, you're probably doing lunch count of some sort and lunch selection. And everybody's obviously got to do attendance every day. So having that attendance and sign-in similar to what Erin showed in her video with the child that was graphing that, showing that, but then when you're actually physically going and taking attendance, you are in lunch count, you are involving your students in that. By saying, okay, let my secretary, can you tell me how many students are here today? How many students are at home? We know that we have 15 students in our classroom, but 5 are at home today. Can you tell me how many students we have left? And then they're counting and you can say, that's right. 15 minus 5 is 10. And they're doing big math problems, right? That's a big subtraction problem for like a first grader, second grader. That's great. So you can do that with them. And then weather graphing. Okay, this is data analysis. So I will say, as a teacher, when I was a newer teacher and then even going into other teachers' classrooms, doing the graphing and the data analysis and changing it up was a little bit intimidating to me. So if you're going to do or want to start and you're a little overwhelmed, doing a weather graph every day during your morning meeting is a great place to start. And if this is all you're able to do all school year for your graphing, it is plenty, and it is preparing them for kindergarten. So a great way to do this is having your weather helper for the day, and they're checking the weather, and then you've got a graph with a picture of each of the types of weather. And then each day, as your weather helper is reporting the weather, you are putting up or marking through that specific weather was seen that day. And what you can do is, as you collect that every day, you're talking about how many rainy days have we had. I noticed that we had 5 rainy days and 3 windy days this month. I wonder which type of weather we've had the most of, which one have we had the least of, which one's the same this month. And then throughout the school year, you can even keep those charts if you've done it on chart paper or something, and compare each month and talk about the different weather that you're seeing. Did we have any snowy weather in May? No, why not? So you can incorporate science there as well. And then we're going to do some lovely teacher-led songs real quick before we let you guys go today. I'm going to start with a fish song. Most of you know the fish song, and most of you know about the fish biting your finger, but I have actually changed it a little bit. Please don't get upset. And we're going to actually incorporate the numbers 11 through 20. I was a previous special educator, and I had children that were 3 in my special education classroom that had a difficult time counting. And by the end of the year with this song, they could count to 20. So please bear with me as I sing our fish song. It goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Once I caught a fish alive. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then I let him go again. This is the change. 11, 12, 13. The fish is swimming up the stream. 14, 15, 16. He turned and made a face at me. 17, 18, 19, 20. Boy, that fish sure acted funny. So that's the different fish song if you want to use it. You'll have a recording of this afterwards, so please give me credit. Enjoy. All right, so I'm going to let Kathy go next, and she's going to be sharing 1, 2, buckle my shoe.
So I took, I think, the oldest and the shortest. So we all know it. 1, 2, buckle my shoe. 3, 4, shut the door. 5, 6, pick up sticks. 7, 8, lay them straight. 9, 10, let's do it again. Or a big fat hen, whatever version you'd like. And when I was researching it, it actually goes way beyond 10, but we're going to stop at 10 today.
Now what a teaser, Kathy. I want to know when it goes beyond 10. I think I've only ever learned up to 10. Somebody do that research. Get back to us. So mine is going to be Shapes, Old Brass Wagon. So bear with me in here. But it goes to the tune of a old square dancing song. Goes like this. Circle to the right, old brass wagon, circle to the right, old brass wagon, circle to the right, old brass wagon, that makes 1, my darling. Oval to the left, old brass wagon, oval to the left, old brass wagon, oval to the left, old brass wagon, that makes 2, my darling. Triangle up high, old brass wagon, triangle up high, old brass wagon, triangle up high, old brass wagon, that makes 3, my darling. Rectangle down low, old brass wagon, rectangle down low, old brass wagon, rectangle down low, old brass wagon, that makes 4, my darling. Last one. Square in the middle, old brass wagon, square in the middle, old brass wagon, square in the middle, old brass wagon. Now there's 5, my darling. We'll end with 5, my darling. And it's going to be stuck in your head, so you're welcome. Christine.
That's amazing. I didn't want to follow you.
I say 5 freckled frogs, but Christine knows it as 5 speckled frogs.
So I will just get us started with the first verse because they repeat, but it goes 5 green and speckled frogs sat on a speckled log, eating some most delicious bugs. Yum, yum. One jumped into the pool where it was nice and cool. Then there were 4 green speckled frogs. Bloop, bloop. And you keep going. 4, 3, 2, 1. Lots of sound effects, but counting down with your fingers, motions, good stuff.
Christine, you didn't want to do the slurp. That's the best part.
Virginia doesn't slurp. I go glub
not a
glub too,
slurp.
Christine. It's okay.
I would have slurped. I didn't know the slurp.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So hopefully we know that teacher-led finger plays and songs can get everyone engaged, and there's a ton to learn about. So Rachel.
Definitely. Thank you so much, guys, for sharing all that. So now we're just going to kind of wrap up. Hopefully you guys learned a lot today. What we want you to do now is really visualize and reflect on your morning with students, because we know you guys have been in those classrooms all day long. It's nap time now, hopefully. And so we really want you to think about your morning, and then think about if there was a missed notice, name, extend. Now that you've learned all this great material, was there something that you missed this morning that maybe if you had a time machine and could go back, you would think about doing something a little bit more differently to be able to extend that math learning? So if you can think of that and drop it in the chat, we would love to kind of shout those out and share those with everybody, because we've all been there, right? So go ahead and share with us if there's anything that that you saw this morning that maybe now you would be able to do a little differently, or that you would love to do a little differently when you get to work tomorrow. Bubble time.
It could really be anything that you're thinking about. Like, oh yeah, I was engaged with a child in dramatic play, and I really saw them carefully placing the food into the containers or onto the plates, and then arranging the plate just so, and the cup in the upper right hand side. So maybe that was an opportunity for you to use, for me to use my descriptive language to describe, oh, I notice you putting one circle plate in the middle, and one cup at the top, and one fork to the left. And so it could have just been as simple as describing a child's play during interest area time, or something else that maybe sparked a memory. So we're really looking for maybe your own reflection onto your day to this point. And then what could you do to notice, name, and extend the learning in that moment?
So we've got some
such
great
a-
ones, Erin. We've got bubble time, which I'm assuming is when you're maybe blowing bubbles and listening to music and dancing around in the classroom. That's a great down for math. That one-to-one correspondence when you're popping those bubbles, or talking about the different sizes. That's great.
I love that Cynthia is inspired to move her sign-in chart so they can revisit it and see it.
Yeah,
during
use it as a
group
graph.
time.
Yeah, that's great.
Awesome.
Those I wonder statements. Yeah, it's amazing when you use the word I wonder or I notice instead of questioning, how many more answers you get, even with my 13-year-old son at home.
And while you're putting your answers in the chat, we know we went over, so if anybody has to hop off, we completely understand that we're a couple minutes over. Thank you for joining us. But as you're putting your reflections in the chat for how you can notice, name, and extend throughout your day, really think about how you want to honor the child's play and not disrupt it for the sake of introducing math language and math thinking, right? So if a child is deep in their dramatic play with their characters and they're in the middle of a scenario, but you happen to see an opportunity to use positional language or to ask the child to count, try to refrain from interrupting or kind of hijacking a child's play for the sake of introducing or commenting math vocabulary, but instead really be that detective to like look at their play, describe what you're seeing, and then it's like you're plucking it out of magic. Oh yes, you're stacking 6 on top of each other. And then like you kind of keep talking, and then suddenly the child, before you know it, they're counting. Like you did 5, 6, you're kind of counting along, and then suddenly you hear the child picking up. It might not even be in the right order. They might say 9, 2, 4, but suddenly your influence, because you were just simply describing the child's play, really like attuned to what they were focused on, they will pick up on that. And then suddenly you have this serve and return and like this magical relationship. So kind of want to leave you to that as we're focusing on honoring the children's play and while still being able to support their math learning and math concepts. Anything that I missed in the chat, guys? while I was on my soapbox.
No, they had all kinds of great ideas. It's pretty pretty good. We have lots of folks just saying all the things that they've learned today that they now want to go back and share, which is very gratifying to us. We've worked really hard on this, guys. We appreciate you guys so much.
So here are two of the references we relied heavily on when creating this webinar, and they have so many great references and resources for teachers and anyone working with young children. So the Erickson Institute, that is where the 9 Big Ideas emerged from. And then Dream, which is part of Stanford. They have lots and lots of really great, applicable, accessible resources for teachers. Whoops. Thank you. And finally, here are some of our other Becker's made resources for you guys. We have the 9 Big Ideas kind of overview if you're just trying to refresh your memory. We have a 1-page handout that offers prompts and questions for extending all of these big ideas. We have a inspiration to action planning guide so that after a webinar, you have all these things kind of percolating and you're like, oh, where do I start? And it walks you through step by step. What am I going to do? Who am I going to talk to? What's the first thing I need to put into place so I can go take action with this new learning? And then finally, a notice, name, and extend reflection guide that has a page for each time of your day so that you can take notes and jot things down. So like Erin said, if there was something you want to remember, but maybe it wasn't the perfect time to interrupt the child's play, you have a great place to document it and then return to that during either a teacher-led activity or more purposefully during an open-ended playtime as well.